كلية الفقه الحنفي تقدم.
السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين والعاقبة للمتقين، والصلاة والسلام على سيد الأنبياء والمرسلين نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. أما بعد. In these few videos, we're going to continue looking at scenarios of breaking oaths or making oaths and taking oaths in relation to food items. And again, there's going to be a lot of customary practice that comes into play over here. So we'll be looking at scenarios. For example, if a person says, I swear by Allah, I will not eat a roast, or I will not eat grilled food, or I will not have a barbecue. So you'll be looking at what type of foods does that apply to. What is a customary practice? What do we refer to as grilled? Does it apply to only meats? What if a person wants to grill some vegetables? Will that take place or not? Similarly, if a person says, I swear by Allah, I will not eat tabikh, I will not eat a curry. Then what if you just have the meat from the curry, or if you just have the soup and the broth from the curry? Then will the oath break or not? So we'll be looking at those types of scenarios as well. There's a lengthy discussion that will come up in regards to fruits. What is considered a fruit? What is not considered a fruit? And how do we determine when a person makes a general statement like I will not eat fruit, that which items will actually break the oath and which items will not break the oath? There are some other types of words that are commonly used in the Arabic language for food items. So for example, idam. So we'll be looking at what idam is. We'll be looking at fakiha, which is fruits. We'll be looking at the concept of tabikh. Then we'll be looking at times in the day. For example, lunch, dinner, breakfast. A person says, I won't have lunch. What does that mean? Is there a particular time for that meal? What if they just have a few grapes, for example? Does it vary? Does the scenario vary based on where people are living? Does it vary based on what their practice is? We'll then have some more discussion in regards to this dilemma of hakika and majaz. And there's a good case scenario coming up of I will not drink from the river. So does that mean directly putting your face to the river? Or does it mean taking with your hand and taking from a container? And then there are going to be some discussions there between Imam Abu Hanifa and his students. And that will actually be a very good case scenario of looking at some ways of applying usul as well when it comes to these types of scenarios. So there will be a few scenarios like this that we'll be discussing in regards to food items and consuming food items. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. والعاقبة للمتقين والصلاة والسلام على سيد الأنبياء والمرسلين نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. أما بعد. We have started looking at scenarios related to food. So if somebody takes an oath that they're not going to eat a certain or a particular type of food, how do we look at that, and what type of scenarios or circumstances would break the oath and what will not break the oath? In the last scenario, we had a look at a dilemma between a hakika and majaz issue, whether the literal meaning can actually be taken or not. Imam Abu Hanifa, he says that when the literal meaning can be taken, then you must go by the literal meaning. And we said that Sahibain said that where the literal meaning is, where the majazi meaning is also an application, then we're going to apply the majazi meaning also. So based on that, we had a look at some cases of eating wheat and some cases of eating and consuming flour and products made from both of those. Now the text, the books of fiqh, they discuss again various other scenarios as well in relation to food items. So we'll be coming across certain words and terms that are used related to food, used by the fuqaha, used by the Arabs of the time. And then maybe we can try and draw some parallels to our time as well. So the jurists say, وَالشِّوَاءُ مِنَ اللَّحْمِ وَالشِّوَاءُ مِنَ اللَّحْمِ. So shiwa is a grill or a roast. When you grill food or when you roast food. So if a person says, I will not eat roasted food, or I will not eat grilled food, what does that mean? Does that apply to all types of foods, all types of items that are grilled and roasted, or does it only apply to specific? So by saying ash-shiwa'u min al-lahmi, the jurists are saying that when a person says I will not eat roast, I will not eat grilled food, they refer the oath is only applicable to meat only, and not even fish, for example. Not even fish, let alone other things like, vegetables. The reason why is because when a person generally says grilled, they're referring to grilled meats based on the custom. So if that's the custom, where the grill is referring to either grilled chicken, for example, then, when you say grill, you don't generally mean fish, then in that case, by saying grill, even though technically the word can incorporate anything that could be grilled, but because of the custom, it will be restricted only to fish. But again, what can override this? Intention. So if the individual intends all foods grilled, then that intention will apply. Similar today, if you were to say, I won't eat barbecue. I won't have a barbecue. Now, on a barbecue, you cook, chicken, meat, lamb, chops. Some people barbecue fish. Some people, grill vegetables and all sorts. So based on the custom, what is customarily understood to be barbecuing, right? So based on that, when a person says, I swear by Allah, I will not have a barbecue, does that mean that literally when you have an outdoor barbecue which you do in the garden, that's not what you're going to eat? Or does it also apply to grilled food insides, for example? So it's the custom, it's how people use those words, that is what's going to be intended. But if a person says by barbecue and they intend anything, so even if some vegetables were grilled on the barbecue, then and that was the intention, then the oath will break even by consuming those vegetables. Another term that the fuqaha use is tabikh. Tabikh is essentially cooked food. So cooked food or meat which is cooked in kind of like a broth. So meat which is cooked in a broth. So tabikh is meat cooked in a broth, and even if you just consumed the broth itself, the curry itself, without trying to take a piece of the meat, the oath will become invalid. So they say, وَالطَّبِيخُ مَا يُطْبَخُ مِنَ اللَّحْمِ بِالْمَاءِ وَيَحْنَثُ بِأَكْلِ مَرَقِهِ. So if you have a bowl of curry with some meat pieces inside, and you say, I swear by Allah, I will not eat the tabikh, and the tabikh is the meat cooked with the broth. So even if you were to just take the broth, then the oath will become invalid and will break even if you didn't take pieces of the meat. And also, most likely, there may even be shreds of meat in the broth as well anyway. If the intention is all foods that are cooked, then again that intention will apply. So if you say by tabikh, you're not referring to a curry where meat is cooked with a broth, you're referring to all types of food, then again your intention will override and your intention will be given preference, and by using the word tabikh, you actually intend all types of food. So this was different to shiwa. Remember we said shiwa based on the custom only applies to laham, to meat. Whereas in this case, tabikh was a combination of the laham and the shurba, the laham and the broth. Another discussion the fuqaha bring is, a person says, I swear by Allah, I'm not going to eat fruit. I'm not going to eat fruit. Now, they have a bit of a discussion that which items are considered fruits and which items are not considered fruits. I think in today's custom it might be a bit more easier because generally people are aware of what are fruits and what are vegetables, what are considered fruits and what are considered vegetables, and then the items are generally categorized quite clearly as to what is a fruit and what is a vegetable. Now at the time of the fuqaha, they were having this discussion as to what do we consider to be a fruit. So they say, وَالرُّطَبُ وَالْعِنَبُ وَالرُّمَّانُ وَالْخِيَارُ وَالْقِثَّاءُ لَيْسَ بِفَاكِهَةٍ. So there are certain things that we consider to be fruits for sure, apples and pears and bananas and so on. But what about dates? So you have dates. Okay, is dates based on the understanding of the fuqaha and their custom? Was dates something which you consider a fruit? Now remember, when they talk about fruits, fakiha is something that is consumed kind of as a bit of excitement, enjoyment. You'd relax and you just have some fakiha. Not like how we have fruits today. It's more like maybe going out for a dessert. So fakiha is like something over and above and beyond. You don't necessarily have to have it. It's not part of your. It's not part of your regular meal. It's something in addition that if you have the funds for, and you have a bit of time, and if you want to have a bit of luxury, then you have a fakiha. So the fuqaha are saying that things like rutab, dates, grapes, pomegranates, and the like, they're not actually considered, even cucumber, they're not considered fruit. Now, of course, we would consider some of these fruits and some of these vegetables, but they're looking at it from the literal fakiha perspective, where you're just having a bit of extra kind of indulgence. Now, that's according to Imam Abu Hanifa. According to Sahibain, they say rutab, pomegranates, and grapes are fruits because people eat them as fruits. Nowadays, people are consuming them as fruits, so we have to look at them as fruits, and the oath will break. Bit of a difference between Imam Abu Hanifa and his students. Imam Abu Hanifa, his argument is, in the Quran it says, فِيهِمَا فَاكِهَةٌ وَنَخْلٌ وَرُمَّانٌ. فِيهِمَا, there is fakiha and nakhal and rumman. So rumman is pomegranates, right? So if there's fakiha and rumman, and you have a atf, you have a waw in between, that means these must be two distinct things. If I say Zayd and Imran entered the room, Zayd and Imran can't be the same person because it says Zayd and Imran, so there must be two different people. So the Quran is saying فِيهِمَا فَاكِهَةٌ وَنَخْلٌ وَرُمَّانٌ. So there is fakiha and there is rumman, which means that these must be two different things linguistically. So when a person says, I will not eat fakiha, he can't be referring to rumman and these other things that Imam Abu Hanifa mentions as well. As for the idea that the fruit is eaten like, these items are eaten like fruits, he mentions that fruit is something eaten before or after food, but is not eaten to fill yourself up. Whereas the customary practice at that time was that items like dates and grapes can be used to actually fill yourself up. If they didn't have any food at home, they would just eat grapes. They would eat dates, dates or grapes. So they would eat them as like a substitute for a meal. It's not like something in addition to that. As for pomegranate, why does Imam Abu Hanifa not consider pomegranate to be part of a fruit in addition to this verse? Another reason is because pomegranate was also used for medication. So automatically when somebody says fruit or fakiha, they don't automatically think of pomegranate because at that time pomegranates were also used for medication. Unless, of course, you had an intention to incorporate these items when you said the word fruit. So we're getting to see here how the custom is playing a very important role in determining what is a fakiha and what is not. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والعاقبة للمتقين والصلاة والسلام على سيد الأنبياء والمرسلين نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين أما بعد. So we're having this discussion about fakiha and what is considered fakiha, what is not. Imam Abu Hanifa has a bit more of a stricter approach, and he says things like dates and grapes and pomegranate and so on are not considered fakiha because first of all in the Quran you have the atf of fakiha and rumman, which shows that they're two different things linguistically, and also fakiha is something which is eaten casually after having a meal. It's not the actual meal itself, whereas some of these items can be eaten as a meal like grapes and dates. Also the custom of the time was to use pomegranate a lot in medication, so you're seen more as a medicinal item as opposed to an actual fruit or an item of luxury. So because of that, these will not be considered fakiha. Sahibin say no, now if you look at people, everyone is eating these items as though they are fruits, and therefore that will be the case. So even in today's time, we look at those items, what do people consider to be fruits, and based on that you will apply the ruling. So these rulings can change very quickly based on the custom changing, but in either case, if the person intended to incorporate them, then regardless of the custom, the intention will apply. Now another word that is used is idam. Another word that is used is idam. Now idam is, the fuqaha say, al-idamu ma yustabaghu bihi kal-khalli wal-zayti wal-milhi. Idam is something that you cook with, or you eat or consume with. So if you take food items and you break them into two categories, you get those that can be eaten alone and those that cannot be eaten alone. If this is an item that is not eaten by itself, eaten alone, then it can be considered as idam. So idam is essentially when you have some, just say you have, for example, some bread. Now you don't just eat bread by itself. It doesn't go down your throat by itself. You generally have to have something with it, or you put something on it to help it go down, right? So for example, you might put some olive oil on it, you might put some, any of these kind of items on it, then that becomes the idam. Whereas if you have items that can be eaten by themselves, for example, chicken, cheese, eggs, people can just eat boiled eggs as they're walking, people can eat chicken as they're going, right? So these are not considered idam. If you look at oil, salt, vinegar, these are things that might be put together and then spread on top of bread or something like that, then that will become an idam, right? So when an individual is saying, I will not consume idam, then that is essentially what they are referring to, these items which are consumed generally with bread or the like and are not consumed on their own by themselves. The next discussion is in relation to food times, meal plans. So a person says, I swear by Allah, I will not have breakfast. I swear by Allah, I will not have lunch. I will not have dinner. I will not have brunch. I will not have tea. What do they mean by those? So in Arabic, you have the concept of ghada, asha, and suhoor. So the person says, I will not have ghada, I will not have asha, I will not have suhoor. So there is a bit of a, the time period for each of these is stipulated and is predetermined. So ghada is from tulu'ul fajr, from when the beginning of fajr time, when fajr time starts, up until dhuhr time. So from fajr time, right up until the dhuhr time. Asha is from dhuhr up until half the night. Asha is from dhuhr to half the night. So if you have a meal you generally think Asha is evening, right? If you're having any meal after dhuhr, all the way up to the midnight, that is considered Asha. And Ghada is anything before dhuhr prayer. Suhoor is from middle of the night up to Tulu'ul Fajr. Middle of the night up to Tulu'ul Fajr. So if you start by midnight to Tulu'ul Fajr is Suhoor. Then Tulu'ul Fajr all the way to dhuhr is Ghada. And then from dhuhr all the way round to midnight up until Suhoor again is going to be Ghada. Asha, sorry. It's going to be Asha. Now, if a person says, I'm not going to have dinner, so we'll have to look at what is considered to be dinner in the English language. Is it a meal after 5 o'clock? Is it a meal after 4 o'clock? Is it a meal in the evening, maybe after 6 o'clock? What is lunch? So clearly something around 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock will be considered having lunch. When you wake up in the morning, that will be your breakfast. Now, if a person says, I'm not going to have dinner, I'm not going to have Asha, and they end up eating just one morsel of food, then that will not be considered to be having a ghada, right? It refers to eating in a way which is actually fulfilling. Like when you actually have a meal, when you have a lunch, when you have a dinner, you eat in a way that is filling, then you've done ghada. So just say you're about to leave the house, you're quite hungry, you need to go for work, you're running late, and then lunch is actually being prepared at home, and the family are going to sit down, but you need to run out. You quickly sit down and just have 1 or 2 morsels and you run out. You didn't sit and have lunch. So the fuqaha, again, you notice that they're very specific. They try and iron out all the subtle details in between. So having a morsel or 2 is not sufficient, right? They say that if you go up to about half filled, if you go more than half filled, then at that point you will have considered to have had your lunch or your dinner. Anything other than that is going to be not sufficient to break the oath. Also, the custom of each city is also going to be taken into consideration. So just say in an Arab country, somebody says, I will not have ghada. I will not have ghada, right? Or let's say I will not have dinner. I will not have dinner. And then the person goes and eats 3 apples, right? Will you say they've had ghada? They've had dinner? No. Asha, you've not had dinner. Why? Because nobody considers dinner to be a meal, a dinner that you actually eat. It's not the custom. The custom is to have a proper dinner. So similarly, the example that the jurist will give is, if somebody says, I will not have ghada, and then they go and drink milk. So if there's somebody who lives in the city, then that will not be considered ghada for them. That will not be considered a lunch for them, because in the city you don't generally just have milk for lunch. But if they are a Bedouin, then for them the oath will break, because for them it was customary to have something like milk for lunch. It's not milk for their ghada. So you're looking at the customary practice in terms of how do we refer to these times, lunch, breakfast, dinner. You're looking at the quantity of how much you're going to be eating. And finally, you're also going to be looking at what kind of items are considered to fulfill that meal. What items are considered to fulfill that meal. Now the next discussion is about drinking. So the fuqaha, they say, وَالشُّرْبُ مِنَ النَّهْرِ الْقَرْعُ مِنْهُ. وَالشُّرْبُ مِنَ النَّهْرِ الْقَرْعُ مِنْهُ. A person says, I'm not going to drink from the stream. I'm not going to drink from this river. Right? Now what does that mean? Does that mean, because literally drinking from the river means put your mouth against the river and drink it directly. What if a person took water in their hand and then drank it? Or they took a container and they filled the water and then they drank it. So if you say, I'm not going to drink from the river, then this refers directly to placing your mouth with the water. Directly put your mouth with the water and drink from it. If you use your hand or a container or something else to lift the water away, then the oath will not break. This is according to Imam Abu Hanifa. According to Sahibain, it's going to break in all scenarios. It's going to break in all scenarios. As long as you've drank the water from that river, the oath is going to break. Now again, there's going to be some contention here in regards to the principle. You have a literal meaning and you have a majazi meaning. The literal meaning is to drink using your mouth directly. That's what, when you say, I'm not going to drink from the river, literally that means my mouth is not going to touch the river. The majazi meaning is to take the water away and drink that water regardless of how you drink it. According to Imam Abu Hanifa, if the literal is possible, then you will apply the literal. So because you can physically go and touch your mouth with the water, the river, and drink the water, then we're not going to go to the majaz at all. Right? So for as long as the literal is in application and is possible. In the case of the wheat, it was possible, he said. But when it came to the flour, he said it's not in application anymore. People don't eat the flour directly. So here, because the literal is possible, the literal apply. Sahibain say, look, the literal is possible, but the majaz is also there. And is also possible. Right? So based on the custom of the people, which is to drink using containers, we're going to apply the majazi meaning. So Sahibain say you can use both the literal and the majaz, because the literal meaning is in practice and the majaz is the customary practice of the people. We'll have a bit more of a discussion about this, inshallah. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والعاقبة للمتقين والصلاة والسلام على سيد الأنبياء والمرسلين نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين أما بعد. So we're having this contention between literal and metaphorical meaning. Imam Abu Hanifa says the literal is possible, so we don't go to majaz. Sahibain say, look, literal is there, fine, so we'll apply the literal and we'll apply the majaz because of the customary practice. Imam Abu Hanifa will basically say that, look, by agreement, the literal meaning, which is using your mouth to drink the water, breaks the oath. So we're going by what is unanimous and what is agreed upon. Sahibain say, okay, the literal meaning is the one that is agreed upon. However, the majaz, the metaphorical meaning of taking the water away, is actually the one that is more commonly used than the literal. The literal is only used, people don't just put their mouth against the water and drink. They will only do that if they don't have a cup or something to use. If they have a cup or something to use, they wouldn't do that. So it's more common to actually use the majaz than it is to use the literal. Right? So some fuqaha, the later fuqaha, what they said is, Imam Abu Hanifa, he saw the people drinking directly from the water with their mouth, and that was a custom at his time. Whereas Sahibain, they saw later on that the Arabs were not doing that at all. It was more common, were hardly doing that, more common for them to use items. So therefore, based on that and the customary practice of the time, you are then going to have this difference of opinion as to how the rule is going to apply. So there's two things here. One is a customary practice of the people, but also this debate as to, do you go by the literal or the metaphorical or both? Now, another scenario, لو حلف لا يشرب من الجب أو البئر يحنث بالإناء. Now, if a person said that I am not going to drink from this water tank or this well, I'm not going to drink from this well, for example, then in that scenario, you know how in last scenario Imam Abu Hanifa said, no, you have to drink directly using your mouth? In this scenario, Imam Abu Hanifa doesn't say that, and he says, even if you use a container, then the oath is going to break. Why? Is there a difference here? There's a difference here because you can't drink directly from the well. A well, you will need to lower a bucket, you need to take the water out, and then you're going to use a container, or you're going to use a pump, and you're going to use a container. Right? So, because the literal meaning is not used at all, then it will not apply. So even if a person happened to descend into the well and directly drank water from the well, the oath still will not break. The oath still will not break. The reason why is because the hakiki and the majazi meaning, the reason why is because he says you cannot apply the hakiki and the majazi meaning together in one word. Right? You cannot apply, if you either you go for the hakiki or you go for the majazi. It's not going to say that you are allowed to use the hakiki and the majazi together. So therefore, once we've decided that, look, the hakiki meaning is abandoned, is hakika matruka, is abandoned. People don't use it at all anymore. Like in the case of the flour, people don't use that at all anymore. So therefore, even if somebody did eat flour, the oath will not break unless they intended that specifically. So similarly here, we're not going to use the hakiki meaning because we've gone to majaz, we're going to stick to the majaz. Whereas in the previous scenarios, it seems that Sahibain, they were a bit more relaxed with using the hakiki and the majaz together. Right, another case. The fuqaha say, وَالسَّمَكُ وَالْأَلْيَةُ لَيْسَ بِلَحْمٍ. Now this is interesting because this is talking about the word meat. The word meat. So when a person says, I swear by Allah, I'm not going to eat meat. Today I'm not going to eat meat. Now the fuqaha say, based on their custom, that meat does not incorporate fish. So whichever animal meat they eat, it will break except for fish. And it doesn't matter how it's cooked. If you say, I'm not going to eat meat, it doesn't matter if you boil it, bake it, grill it, barbecue it, however, it will break. But it will not break with fish. Why? Because the custom of the time was not to consider fish to be meat. Now, we have this idea of, white meat and red meat, and fish can be classified as a meat, right? But sometimes, when you're asking about the meals, and you say, look, what is it a meat dish or not? Your intention is generally chicken or lamb or beef, right? You generally have these things in mind. For meat, sometimes fish is not considered to be meat in that sense when you just speak amongst people. So here, again, the customary practice is in application here. What is the custom of the people when they say meat? What products does it include? Does it include fish or does it not include fish? Another similar point of discussion is وَالْكَرِشُ وَالْكَبِدُ وَالرِّئَةُ وَالْفُؤَادُ وَالْكُلْيَةُ وَالرَّأْسُ وَالْأَكَارِعُ وَالْأَمْعَاءُ وَالطِّحَادُ لَحْمٌ. So this is now, all the other parts of the body. Generally, when you're eating meat, you have the leg and the thigh, the breast, the wing, the chops, and so on. But what about all the other things like the stomach, the liver, the lungs, and all the internal organs, and so on? If a person says, I swear by Allah, I'm not going to eat meat, does it incorporate all of these? The fuqaha say all of these are included within it. So the stomach, the liver, the lungs, everything will be included. So if you have a dish of liver, and you said that you're not going to eat meat, then that will also be considered to be a meat, and the oath will break. Why is that the case? So they say, look, the reason why is because at their time, the custom was that these items were sold along with meat. So when you go to the butcher and you go and purchase meat, you will automatically get these items with it. So when you say, I want 5 kg of meat, then these items automatically, naturally, just come when you order the meat. And they mentioned that if in another area, these items are not referred to when ordering meat, and you don't generally acquire all of these items when you go and order some meat, then based on that custom, it will not be considered meat. So I think maybe today that might be the case, whereas here, especially in the UK, generally if you go to buy chicken, you go to buy lamb, you're not expecting them to give you the liver or the stomach or any of those parts of the animal. In fact, you'd be quite shocked if they did give you that. You'd say, no, I want the meat, I want the leg, or I want the thigh, and so on. So we would not consider that to be meat. If you say you're not going to eat fat, it's not going to eat fat. At the time of the fuqaha, they made a distinction between the fat on the front and the fat on the back. So at their time, when they said fat, animal fat, fat meant the fat on the front. As for the back, that would be considered to be meat. And again, a lot of that depends on the custom. Maybe today we don't even consider fat to be meat. So if a person says, I'm not going to eat meat, then fat wouldn't even be included in that. Or maybe it could be because there's always a bit of fat attached to the meat. Allahu A'lam. You'd have to kind of investigate a little bit as to what is the custom of the time. Now finally, if a person took an oath, لا يأكل من هذا البصر فأكله رطبا لم يحنث وكذا الرطب إذا صار تمرا واللبن شيرازا. So when you go have dates, they go through a phase. First they are raw, unripe, called busr, and then they're left to ripen and they become a rutab, and then eventually they become the full-on tamar, date. So if a person says, I'm not going to eat from this busr, which is unripe dates, and then that busr is left and it becomes a rutab. Now if he eats that rutab, his oath is not going to break, because he said, I'm not going to eat busr, and it's no longer busr. Similarly, if he says, I'm not going to eat rutab, and he eats tamar, right? It's a totally different, it becomes like a different item. So the oath is not going to break. Similarly, if a person says, I'm not going to drink milk, and then this really nice product is made using milk, but it's now named something totally different. It's not even a milkshake, it's just something totally different. Maybe it's become a custard or something, right? Then in that case, the individual's oath will not break, because it's not the same item that he said he is not going to eat. So these are, as you can see, various scenarios again in relation to how we apply the rule of taking oaths to food items. Inshallah, we'll be carrying on in the next video, inshallah ta'ala. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين ولا عاقبة للمتقين والصلاة والسلام على سيد الأنبياء والمرسلين نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين أما بعد. Alhamdulillah, in these videos we've had a look at some more scenarios in regards to food items. So you mentioned that if an individual said they're not going to have a grill or a roast or a barbecue, then that would apply to what is customarily considered to be a grill or a roast or a barbecue. If there are any specific food items that are grilled in that locality, then that is what will apply to grilled food. Similarly, if you use the words like a curry, then what is customarily considered to be a curry? And does that apply to just the meat or just the broth? We had a look at that scenario, that tabikh in the Arabic language refers to the cooked food with a broth, and even if you just had the broth itself, the oath will become invalid. We then had a look at fakiha, the concept of fruits, and there was a nice discussion between Imam Abu Hanifa and Sahibain as to how you look at fruits. So Imam Abu Hanifa took an angle of looking at the Quran and the wordings in the Quran as well, whereas Sahibain went more towards the customary practice of what the people are doing. We then had a look at a concept called idam, and idam is something that you don't eat alone. It's not an item of food that's eaten by itself, but it's used to help digest bread and and these types of products. So when a person says idam, it's just clarifying exactly what is meant by idam. It would be good that if a person was to, in the English language, take certain words, for example condiments and so on, and kind of list that, okay, what would be considered a condiment, what would not be considered a condiment. We then had a look at times in the days, so lunch, breakfast, dinner, and we had a look at, for example, we said ghada is from fajr time to dhuhr, asha is from dhuhr to half the night, and anything between half the night up to tulu' al-fajr is considered to be suhoor. So you have 3 meals in the day in the Arabic language, ghada, asha and suhoor. Then we had a nice interesting discussion of drinking directly from the river. Imam Abu Hanifa was looking at the literal meaning, and also that was the application of the people of the time and the practice of the people of the time. Whereas Sahibain, they were looking at the customary of their time, and that was to go for more of a metaphorical meaning, which is to drink even though you're taking from a container. So we have these types of scenarios that we had looked at, and alhamdulillah, it kind of puts into practice a lot of these usul that we have been learning as well.